Hello, my name is Amanda Apicella. Welcome from New York, where we have a session with Professor Rahni, who would share his personal, professional, and community perspectives with us today. Devad N. Rahni has served as professor of chemistry at Pace University in New York for over 30 years. An alumnus of the National University of Iran, he has earned his master's and Ph.D. in chemistry from the universities of New Mexico and New Orleans, respectively. As a Fulbright Senior Research Scholar in Denmark, he has also held visiting professorships in universities of Oxford, Rome, and Florence, to name a few. His concurrent adjunct professorships span from environmental law at Pace University to dermatology at New York Medical College. Throughout his career, he has held visiting academic scientist or consultative positions with IBM, Pepsi, CIBA, Asco Nobel, BASF, American Health Foundation, and others. In 2002, he was elected the chair of the American Chemical Society's New York, New Jersey region, and later a member and chair of Nichols Medal, the oldest and most prestigious chemistry award in the U.S. In more recent times, Professor Rahni has served as the interim associate provost for academic affairs and the chair of University Faculty Council at Pace University. His advisory membership of the NIH, Department of Justice, Fulbright Board, and American Chemical Society are well recognized. Professor Rahni is the recipient of numerous accolades, including Fulbright Algorithm International Scientist, Kennan Excellent Teaching, and the American Chemical Society Outstanding Leadership Award. A highly prolific author of diverse scientific manuscripts, exemplified in his book entitled Bioimaging and Neodegradation. Of his complementary portfolio has dealt with current affairs, science policy, arts, culture, history, and literary treasure troves in Southwest, South Central Asia, with a particular emphasis on Iran. As the founding CEO of Chemical Detective and Health Consultants, LLC, Devad Rahni and his co-founded or served as board member on a number of eminent Iran-American associations, including the Iran Chemistry Association of American Chemical Society, Persian Washkat, and Persian Cultural Foundation. His memoir, Nataz to New York, The Odyssey of an Ordinary Person Wanderer, will soon publish. Thank you for sitting down to share with our viewers where you grew up and walking us through your journey through life. How did your family and surroundings influence you in your formative years?
Hello, and thank you very much, Amanda, for giving the opportunity. I was born in Tajrish, Shemiran, Dezaship of Niavaran Street in Tehran, Iran, as the eldest among a group of 5 siblings, 3 of them younger than me. We moved to Evin, where I was a toddler, and we still have a standing home alongside the Parkway in Evin, where after completing K through 12 public schooling, Shahpur High School was my high school, and receiving my chemistry degree from the National University, I moved to the US in the summer of 1979 to pursue my doctoral and postdoctoral studies, just to return home upon graduation. Well, one could surmise that my lifelong educational aspirations, as well as permanent return to home where I was born, still have to be fulfilled. My living parents in their 80s, born in Natanz, moved to Tehran as teenagers. My father was a school clerk whom recorded and pen calculated grades and GPAs, and ultimately sent grade reports every semester home to parents. Thus, education was deemed to be the key to upward socioeconomic mobility back then, which may still apply anywhere today.
That's very interesting. What pastime did you have while growing up in Evan, Tehran?
That's a good question, especially during teenagerhood, because many things could go wrong. Our pastime when teenagers was to play soccer with small goals and plastic balls, or play tabukar, a baseball-like game or cricket-like game with a homemade bat and tennis balls, or alak dulak, another 2 pieces of a stick to play with. and later hiking mountains to Tochal Peak, which was my monthly passion, 4,200 meter high elevations. And I used to stay in high mountains in Palangchal, Kolakchal, or Shirpala shelters. Beginning each mid-spring, we raided the fruit orchards in Evin to enjoy the bounties of Chagale Badum, or green almonds, and Goje, green plums, mulberries, blackberries, or shatud, cherries, apricots and peaches, pears and grapes, apples, quince, medlars, and persimmons. So this was our passion, trying to raid orchards. Our hide and seek on top of, across dozens of homes, and then climbing up trees or hiding in luscious vegetable fields was our passion too, especially in the evening. And I had to conceal on a blind spot high up on a tree to eat mulberries and wait for somebody to come seek me out. And sometimes they would leave me alone for all the way after midnight. An easy source of pocket money was to pick up bute, or dried pricked bushes, from the hillside close to my home, which is currently next to Evin prison. And then we sell it to neighbors and drivers on the parkway for the fire festival, or Charshambe Suri, as a prelude to Nowruz. I completed English National Institute evening program, and I received my diploma in English as a second language at age 16, 2 years before my high school diploma. When my father bragged to his senior uncle, Akbar, about my overachievement in English, the uncle simply asked me one question: how would you call tokhme kadu, which then was pumpkin seed, as he was cracking them? He scolded my father of wasting his money and my time simply because I couldn't know on the spot the name for kadu or pumpkin.
That sounds like a very fun and interesting childhood. Now, what I'd like to know is, what has been your personal key to success? What were your biggest aspirations and inspirations for your career?
Good question, Amanda. My family was not materialistically rich. Nonetheless, we were blessed with nurturing parents surrounded by extended family and a large circle of friends. In fact, throughout my early life, we had to scavenge to make ends meet. Borrowing interest-free loans from the more distant but affluent side of the family to build our first house and later to add a second floor to it was a major impetus for my family's upward mobility from the fringes of the poverty line. My father grudgingly took me once a year to Bab Homayun, where he bought me a new suit for a few dollars before the New Year, Persian New Year, heralded by Nowruz. The sweet and sour nostalgia was that the suit was always a few sizes larger than my actual size at the time, but he would always insist that I would soon grow into it, which I never did. Amongst my friends were some even more impoverished than we were, but most were from the rapidly emerging aristocratic and extremely affluent technocrats in our neighborhoods, merchants, government ministers, and a few of royal lineage. Hence, like a great many other peers, from primary school onwards, I recognized the need to work part-time and study full-time real hard in order to break away from these struggles around me.
It sounds like growing up in Iran was a true inspiration for you. Now, could you share with us a few more examples of odd jobs you held while you were in 6th through 12th grade high school and how you entered college?
Sure. That's a good question. Among a rather large number of odd jobs and apprenticeships that I took, I could cite fruit picking, blacksmithing, shoemaking, bakery, and later on, when I was a teenager, trying to start tutoring and get paid for it. I pursued to make a few pennies golf caddying in the newly constructed 18-hole Royal Golf Club less than a mile away from my home. And it was a tough job and yet rewarding. Later, I served as an English interpreter at the annual Summer International Trade Exposition across the parkway from my home. This experience allowed me to perfect my English, or as much as I could, and English turned out to be my third language. Of course, after our native language Persian and haphazard Arabic that I was able to converse with. That said, my parents instilled in me to recognize the importance of quality of life and a perpetual sense of reciprocity towards community, which should far outweigh focusing solely on material things. Money is and still is important, but we were told that it's a relative means to a comfortable existence and should not be overshadowing our lives. So money was not always the sole objective. Later, while still attending college, English became my bread and butter. I tutored and managed 14 daily ESL schools in a private school called Armaghan Tarbiyat in Tehran. This 100-year-old institution still stands alongside two streams next to Pahlavi Avenue, which is now name has changed, and the sycamore-lined tree avenue are still standing. And then any time that I had, I studied when I was younger through grade 7, and I was literally the top ranking in my classes. However, as it is the case in most cases, especially for boys during middle school, I slipped really badly for the following 3-4 years until I found myself the last year in high school when I had to really catch up, and I was able to register a grade point average of 17.5 on then scale of 20, and then take the national exam called concours then in order to enter National University, a model university then and still now.
Your fields of interest appear diverse and are seemingly unrelated to a layperson. Could you highlight certain areas of particular interest to you?
Yeah. Analytical chemistry, a modern branch of chemistry which deals with what specific substances are present in a matrix, say in a bodily fluid or an organ, as in a physiologically native region, let's say looking at chemistry constituents in brain or kidney, and how much of each substance is present and how their fate relate to manifestation of specific disease or curing a malady at the molecular level has been really my passion. I opted for biosensors and integration of biological element and electrical transducers to be able to probe such projects. This has remained a major part of my research. Most of my research contributions spans across probing fundamental questions in clinical, environmental, forensics, and medical challenges, and as outlined in our book, which was published, Bioimaging in Neurodegenerations, and also a prolific number of manuscripts, such as the ones in Canadian Journal of Progress in Neuropsychopharmacology and Biological Psychiatry. These works have been published. Opportunistically speaking, however, and in light of my recognized lack of access to cheap pre-postdoctoral intellect and sophisticated instrumentation, most of my work have been collaboratively carried out with colleagues in a cross-disciplinary fashion. These colleagues come from universities such as Oxford, Copenhagen, Rome, Florence, New Orleans, and Stony Brook, as well as colleagues and peers from a number of corporate R&D centers such as IBM, Pepsi, CIBA, AkzoNobel, BASF, and the American Health Foundation.
I see that you are a recipient of many awards. What has been your secret for the success?
Well, as the first generation American, you have the extra pressure on you to be able to over-excel. So that's really the main emphasis. You not only would like to participate in a marathon that has started 20 or 23 years before you even arrived in this marathon, but you really would like to get ahead of the pack and be among the top few percent. So that has been the impetus to be able to overachieve. If there are any allocates that accompany an award, then the credit genuinely belongs to more than one individual, however. Especially in a scientific pursuit, there are always teams that are doing the work. These students, peers, and colleagues who intercollaboratively brought a project to fruition are all equally deserving to be credited for any accolades. Life without a perpetual path of learning, sharing, nurturing, and imparting an conscientious sense of advancing humanity and justice might have as well be a far less meaningful journey for us all, right?
Yeah, definitely. And now, looking towards the future, what are your avenues of research that you are exploring for the next few years?
I continue remaining abreast of and contribute to the much anticipated integration of in vivo biosensors in the human body for real-time monitoring, control, regulation, and drug delivery in specific physiological organs. So that is really the ultimate achievement for biosensor technology. Now, that said, however, and as I'm looking at the final path of my career trajectory, I'm progressively taking more university administrative roles, more community roles, and also trying to switch some of my efforts for scholarship to focus more on writing on the arts and culture, archaeology, history, science and technology and policy, environment, and then I also write poetry and prose in these lines of work, which really is much more fulfilling in many ways at this stage of my career.
With all of your experience in chemistry and your success, what do you believe are the lingering challenges and emerging opportunities in chemistry and education?
It is mind-boggling to compare the ever-increasing and expanding number of chemical molecules discovered for the chemical articles published. For instance, there are over 50 chemical molecules that have been discovered, and 100 million publications have been archived in the chemical sciences, broadly speaking. And these are huge amount of information, and yet we are still in our infancy. We have only scratched the surface of understanding nature and science and how physical world functions. And so therefore, there is so much to be done. Now, the education and training of chemists is also in that context rapidly transforming, due in part to pedagogical innovation and instructional, computational, and simulational technologies. It is, however, ironic that despite access to some of the best instructional technologies and pedagogical methodologies that science and math competencies for K through 12 in the US continues to fall far behind countries like Iran, or even Vietnam for that matter, or North Korea, ironically. Luckily, thanks to a disproportionately large number of instructional and international postdoctoral students and immigrants who come here for doctoral studies, that American universities have benefited and continue to benefit from such international brain drain, basically, since World War II, and so American universities are the cream of the crop worldwide.
Now, with all this experience in chemistry that you gained and knowledge through education, I'm sure you did face a few challenges. So what is the biggest challenge that you have faced in your career?
That's a bit personal, but I'm in such a stage in my life and career that I could share. And thanks for the question, Amanda. Enriched with our historical heritage from our ancestral nation of Iran, we are indeed blessed to live here in the US, where we have effectively raised our children and given back to our adopted homeland here, which we in Persian call America rather than America. However, the lingering impasse between the governments in Iran and the US over the past 4 decades have negatively impacted our career and life prospects in the US. We are caught between a rock and a hard place that we have had nothing to do with. This is increasingly true for achieving mid to upper level career opportunities for Persian American or Iranian Americans, in that entry level is very easy for us because of our achievement, but then trying to move through managerial and leadership ladder rather becomes difficult. One might argue that this is to a certain extent self-inflicted, induced by low self-esteem sometimes, or perhaps due to relentless politically charged rhetoric by the media from both sides the fact still remains that the same propaganda turns the tides of public opinion and turns decision makers against people of Iran, or by extension, against the Iranian Americans. The result is overachievement by Iranian Americans in education and superior career achievement through hard work, and as they defy the odds to advance. Despite such overachievement, many in our community opt for less risky career path to mix in and basically be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, per se. So they don't go necessarily for the very top jobs. I opted for exactly that, but in the long run, it enabled me to strike a delicate balance between job responsibilities and community and family roles. And for that, I'm grateful. So many of us in our lives are caught between a twilight rock and a hard place that we're trying to maneuver through.
Now, you are very actively involved at a leadership level in a lot of organizations. Why are you so passionate about the community, and what do you believe the future holds?
Good question. As a university professor, we have a tripartite activities that we have to accomplish. Teaching, first and foremost, is the very top. Research and scholarship is the next one that I have two phases to it. One is in the sciences and the other one is in society-based type scholarship. And the third one is service. Service starts from student service, university service, professional and learned society service to community service. So therefore, a major hallmark of my tripartite activities is multifaceted service. We're advancing or contributing towards learned and professional societies, government advisory panels, and also international development or community service are primary goals. The advancement of humanity and community, equality and harmony, justice and peace, all anchored on altruism, philanthropy, and voluntarism, basically, is really in our genetic makeup. That's an integral part of being a Persian, to really reach out to the community. These values can be gleaned from our Persian literary poems, prose, and ethos, the philosophical doctrine for a balanced and meaningful life in a cohesive community. So I did nothing beyond the ordinary except to learn from and simply follow in the footsteps of our historical giants in Iran from millennia ago, including Ferdowsi, which is the same as Paradisi, and Rumi, Algorithm, Hafiz, Sadi, Avicenna, and Razes, as well as more contemporary scholars such as Furuq Farrokhzad, a modern Persian poet lady, Parvin Etesami, another lady poet, Ahmad Shamlu, Amir Kabir, and Muhammad Mu'in. The exemplary leaders also in the US have played a role model for many of us to follow.
Now, getting a little bit more personal, can you share your thoughts about being an Iranian American and what it means to you?
Yeah, this is what really is the crux of community work. This is where the rubber hits the road. As much as we may conceal our ethnicity in reaction to xenophobic stereotyping and culture bashing in the US, or for fear of persecutions elsewhere, such as our country of birth, to portraying ourselves as the more popular immigrants, Italians, Greeks, Turks, it is only becoming extremely difficult as world American citizens that we should proudly declare ourselves at the end of the line as Iranians or Iranian Americans. We cannot hide our true identity. We cannot avoid the sheer fact that even after many generations, that to most mainstream Americans, we are perceived as Persians or Iranians, or as what I would refer to Persian watch cats, in contrast to the American watchdogs. And so in that context, we have to deal with our true identity and showcase it in terms of the contributions that we make towards the broader communities, whether it is American community or world community. So long as the two governments of Iran and the US fail to respect each other, embrace the free exchange of arts, culture, science, technology, and remove trade barriers, we would continue to be caught between a rock and a hard place. My thoughts should not be misconstrued when I advocate for saving the baby and the bath, per se, while trusting people to peacefully and in civility cleanse the bathwater, rather than throwing the baby and the bath out. That is destructive for all concerns. I'm not favoring any government or political systems in the Middle East, as they have all emerged at one short historical juncture and disappeared over time. What's far more critical is to safeguard the dignity and the well-earned stature of a diverse group of people, historical people, the Aryans, the Iranians, the Persians, and their secular society, and trying to advocate for human and democratic constitutional rights for them, which are anchored on the sovereignty, security, and heritage of a nation as a whole, Iran being the case here. Let me reiterate again that our Persian ethnicity and culture, it's sufficient just to read the interconnection between Iran and Ireland. Both names means the land of the Aryans. So this is a country, Iran, that goes all the way to prehistoric time. And it's really the anchor, the foundation from which tribes emigrated west into Europe. Having just returned from Harvard Iranian Weekend Forum, which is held every year, the large and as usual most impressive attendees and speakers, several hundred in numbers, all dignitaries and highly accomplished professionals, were charged with the theme engage, engaging not only among ourselves as a recently arrived immigrant community, but far more importantly with the American mainstream. Allow me to take the liberty to extend this very powerful theme, engage, with more consequential words that begin with the same letter, E buzzword, engage. Entice, encapture, educate, energize, yes, engage, enable, empower, effectuate, enrich, and implore. So this should be the motto for us in our life with respect to showcasing ourselves and contributing towards the broader community in which we live and has given us so much.
Thank you for that personal information. Now, lastly, would you like to share any last thoughts to our viewers out there?
Sure. Thank you so very much again to you. And summarizing, I have confidence in our families and community in diaspora, especially here in the US, which is 1 million plus strong, as well as our 80 million brothers and sisters back in Iran, where we all came from, who despite short-run trials and tribulations in our daily life and in our community life, will in the long run, I have no confidence that not only our country of birth, but also millions of us in diaspora will triumph and be able to opt for a socioeconomic and political progress, especially back home, that remain among the most vibrant and immensely contributing to humanity across the world. Our brothers and sisters have spread out across almost every continent since prehistoric time. And irrespective of our diversity in faith or background, we are united in adhering to the golden rule of treating others as you expect to be treated. That one single golden rule is enough for everybody universally to adhere to. And so this is, however, anchored on faith and 3 Zoroastrian tenets of positive thoughts, good and positive words, and good and positive deeds. So these are the unity in Trinity, one golden in 3, in a pedestal of 3 legs, basically. And so Living Persian Life the Fullest is a poem that recently I recited, which is available on the internet, and it pretty much encapsulates that essence of life. So in that regard, no one could have ever more masterfully encapsulated the Iranian life psyche than the 13th century Persian poet Sa'di. And that has become my motto in life. And let me read my own English translation. All humans are members of one frame, since they all from the same essence came. When one frame member becomes distressed, the other members lose their desired rest. If thou feelst not for others' misery, the name human is no name for thee.